And finally, Margaret, to be a good president, I fear a man cannot be his own mentor. He cannot live the Sermon on the Mount. He has to be a Machiavelli, a Caesar, a Borgia, an unctious religio, a liar, a whatnot, to be successful. So, I probably won't be. But I'm having a lot of fun trying the opposite approach. Maybe it'll win. Lots of love, Dad. Say, Rose, are Mr. Johnson and Mr. Whitney there? They are. Good. What about the Attorney General? Tom Clark is there. Good, good. What about Charlie Ross? All right, send them all in. Send them in. Thank you very much, Rose. Gentlemen, good morning. Mr. Whitney, Mr. Johnson, Charlie, Ross, please have a seat. So what have you worked out on the proposed settlement? You mean to tell me that 18 of your 20 railroad brotherhoods are willing to accept the arbitration award, but you're going to stop the railroads from running anyhow? Well, if I had known you were going to tell me that, boys, I would not have asked you over here this morning. The good Lord may have built this earth in 6 days, but that was certainly before labor unions. Now, you think I'm going to sit here and let you tie this whole damn country up? You are crazier than hell. You have got 48 hours to reach a settlement. If you don't, I'm going to take over the railroads in the name of the government. That's all, boys. I said that's all, boys, Mr. Whitney, Mr. Johnson. I know, Charlie. Look, Charlie, I know better than you do that their unions have always backed me politically, but this is not a case of labor versus management. No, sir. This is a case of a few big money boys in management and the war-rich unions against the government, and I am going to teach them to exercise some social responsibility. I've got to get this country back on a peacetime footing, and I'm not going to have the private citizen taking hind tit on the deal. It's got to be fair all the way around, and this inflation business has got to stop. I'm going to take the hides off those bastards. And that goes for the National Association of Manufacturers crowd as well. They are not going to stampede me into lifting price controls. Oh, Charlie, you think we should consult some economists, do you? Well, let me tell you something, Charlie. I dropped into a few supermarkets on my walk the other day, and I don't need these economic wizards to tell me that this country is hurting. All you got to do is see the way it's buying. No, sir, there's only one way to stop this thing, and that's a few swift kicks in the right asses. Besides, if you laid those economists end to end, they point in all directions. No, sir. No, sir. If we leave this to management, they will have prices so high that you will wish you were in the undertaking business just to pick up the newly dead. Why, they'd show you net profit, net greed so high that every labor leader in this country would be screaming for higher wages, and they'd all be screaming that I was interfering with private enterprise. No, sir. If we leave this up to management and labor, the people won't be able to buy anymore. And that's what management wants, because then they yell, sales lag, and they lay off a bunch of workers, and the unions get panicky, they tone down their demands, they ask for less money, and that is what management planned all along. And then they give the working fellow just enough to start buying again on the installment plan, I might add. Oh, they say they're for competition. Well, they're for eliminating competition. I am sick and tired of this government being filed and flooded, and the people being bankrupt and ruined. I may have inherited this job, by God, but I am in charge now, and they damn well better know it. That's all, boys. I never saw myself as president. I was just in the right place at the wrong time. There are a lot of folks who could do a better job than me, but it became mine to do it. Since you got me here, you're going to get the very best I got. You know, I've always thought of myself as a very ordinary man. I don't have any special personal endowments to speak of, but I don't worry about what I don't have. I just try to do the best with what I do have. You know, I've always thought that it's not how you say or do a thing. The point is to get it said and done. And I don't compare myself to other men. No need to. I don't compare myself to Winston Churchill or to Franklin Roosevelt. Every man does things just a little bit differently. And I'll tell you what I mean now. I ran into the all-time great American snob, the lady Astor. Now, she was a transplanted Virginian, and she had developed such a thick British accent that even the British couldn't understand her. Much less standard. Well, I ran into the lady at some ceremony down, I think it was in Williamsburg, Virginia, and she made some rather unkind remarks about my Missouri accent. Well, I cut her short by saying that at least my accent was honest. Now, Winston Churchill, he does things just a little bit differently. He ran into the lady at some dinner party in London, and it's the kind of party that Winston truly enjoys, and he derives most of his enjoyment from imbibing rather large quantities of brandy. Well, the lady was seated next to him, and she undertook to give the Prime Minister a little lecture.
Mr. Prime Minister, I do believe you are quite drunk.
Well, Winston looks at her and says,
You're quite right, my lady. I am quite drunk, and you are quite ugly, but in the morning I will be indisputably sober.
Well, you get my point anyway. Oh, Herbert Hoover's in town. You know, one of the troubles with this job is that when you leave it, you've got to find something else to do. I mean, seriously, it's hell for a man to try to find work when he's been president of the United States. Hacky, get me the Shoreham Hotel, would you? No, just put it through. I'll handle it, Hacky. Thank you very much. What a man, Herbert Hoover, in my opinion. He did a great job feeding all those poor unfortunates after the First World War. And, of course, we rewarded him with this job. Then, of course, the Depression hit, and we all turned our backs on him. But the Depression was not created by Herbert Hoover. No, it was created for him. We seem to forget that he instituted the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which was to keep the small businesses going when the big commercial banks turned their backs on them, which they did. Now, banks, boy, there's a bunch of crooks for you. Well, they're happy to lend you money when you prove you don't need it. You want a dog? You want a friend in this life? Get a dog. Yes, Shoreham Hotel. Yes, could you connect me to Herbert Hoover, please? Harry Truman. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's right. That's the one. Oh, well, all right. Yep, nice chatting with you too. Mr. President, Harry Truman. Well, all right, Mr. Hoover, this is the president. Is that better? All right. Say, I'd like to come up and see you today, if I might. Well, I thought you might feel that way. You want to come down here? Well, that's just fine. I'll send a car for you. Oh, no, not at all. Be there in 10 minutes. All right. Look forward to seeing you. Bye-bye. Hacky, would you send a car to the Shoreham Hotel and pick up Herbert Hoover immediately? All right, and let me know the second he arrives. All right. Thank you, Hacky. Bye-bye. One of the positive things about this job is that when you get it, you get to move into a rather nicely furnished and very comfortable house. But it wasn't always that way. Back in 1800, when John Adams and Abigail moved in here, it was just a big unfinished barn, no furniture, no heat. As a matter of fact, Abigail had to hang her laundry in the east room. Now, the president who tried to complete it and furnish it somewhat was Thomas Jefferson. He did a very, very nice job. He built the north and the south porticos and those elegant terraces out there. Now, those terraces were built in Jefferson's day to hide the hen houses. They say that the best looking, the best dressed, and the highest living fellow that ever held this office was Chester Arthur. They say he even looked like a president. And he kept a mistress on the premises. Now, back home, we call a fella like that a widower with means. Since I've held this office, I always hoped that I would run into Lincoln's ghost, but I never have. They say that Teddy Roosevelt used to talk with the famous man all the time, but I suppose that being a Republican must have helped. Yep. Oh, put it through. Hey, Eddie, how the hell are you? Oh, Herbert Hoover, staying there too. Say, Eddie, when are you coming over to see me? No. Eddie, listen, you bald-headed son of a bitch. Don't you get started on that Israel thing again, or I swear to God I won't let you in the front door. Now, Eddie, I told you I would get to it when I could. No, Eddie. Oh, no, Eddie, don't you start to cry. Eddie, every time you get on that Israel thing, you start to cry, and you just don't do it. Eddie, I can't do things as fast in this job as you think you should. I've got a lot of other customers to think about. No, I can't invite Chaim Weizmann to the White House. Well, Eddie, Israel's not a state yet. You know that. Oh, Eddie, I've got to do things by protocol in this job, and that means dinners and invitations and flags and... Well, what flag can the Waldorf Astoria be flying for Weitzman? Look, Eddie, I'll check with the State Department. Can you get over here in, say about an hour, all right? We'll have a nice little chat, all right? All right, but Eddie, don't you get into that Middle East thing, or I swear to God I won't let you in the front door. All right, okay. All right, look forward to seeing you. Bye-bye. Say, Rose, would you have General Vaughn check it with the State Department and see what we have to do to get Chaim Weitzman invited down here? And find out what flag the Waldorf Astoria in New York is flying for Weitzman, would you? And we'll just fly the same damn thing. Oh, and tell General Vaughn that if the State Department kicks up any fuss about Weitzman not being ahead of state, well, don't worry about it. We'll sneak him in the East Gate and we'll keep it to ourselves. All right, thank you, Rose. Bye-bye. That man that just called, Eddie Jacobson, one of my oldest friends in the world. He and I went bankrupt in business together back in Kansas City many, many years ago. And Eddie is what I thought this country was always about. You see, Eddie is always looking to do something for somebody, even though Eddie might need the help more than they do. Now, I've always thought that there was enough in this country for everybody if the vested few could just get it out of their heads that all benefits ought to filter downward. You know, I've always believed that one of the chief problems in America is that financial control is in the hands of so very few. And I think the first time I said it was on the floor of the United States Senate in 1937. Mr. President, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this morning I'd like to say a few words, if I might, about something I think is one of the chief difficulties in this country today, and that is that we worship money more than honor. That's right. A billionaire is worth more in the eyes of the people than a public servant who works for the public good. And it seems to make no difference that billionaire wrote to his wealth on the sweat of little children and the blood of underpaid labor. You know, we seem to forget that the Carnegie libraries are steeped in the blood of the Homestead steelworkers. No, sir, I will not yield the floor. No, Mr. President, please. No, sir, I will yield when I am ready. And I would remind my esteemed colleague that the Rockefeller Foundation was founded on the bodies of the dead miners of the Colorado Iron and Fuel Company. In a word, we worship mammon. Now, I want to say that I think that there's going to be a settlement someday because the unemployment and the unrest in this country, in my opinion, is a direct result of this bigness of business. Now, you take Wall Street with its ability to control the lifeblood of this country and to hire the best law brains. Wall Street has yet to produce one financial statesman. And by that I mean a man who can recognize the danger of this bigness and this concentration of wealth and try to do something about it. Instead, Wall Street hires the best law brains to serve greed and selfish interests. And I think, no, sir, I will not yield. No. And I think there will be a settlement because there's going to be one bankruptcy too many, there's going to be one receivership too many, and the people are going to demand a settlement. Because, Mr. President, the people can stand just so much. We are building in this country today a Tower of Babel. I yield the floor to the senator. Yes, Rose. Oh, Mr. Hooper's here. Thank you very much. Mr. President, good to see you, sir. Well, you are looking very, very well, sir. Thanks for coming down. Please have a seat. Have a seat. I'm sorry about that Mr. President stuff. I don't know why I do that. It's the same with General Marshall. Please make yourself at home. Have a seat. You know, it's the same with General Marshall. I could call the man George, but for some reason he's always General to me, and I don't know where that is. You are looking extremely well, and it's really nice to have you down here this morning. This morning, I would like to talk with you for a few minutes, if I might, about a subject that I think you know more about than any man on this earth, and that's the subject of human hunger. Now, we have a great surplus of food in this country, and I would like to get it to the right places. The right places, mind you, in Europe and Asia, where it will help with the starvation business. Now, you did a great job after the First World War feeding all those poor unfortunates in Europe, and I was wondering, sir, if you might consider doing such a job for us again right now. What is it? Something I said? No, Mr. President. No, ex-presidents have just as much right to a little emotion as anybody else. You'll do it? Well, thank you, sir. When could you start? Tomorrow morning. Well, that suits me just fine, Mr. Hooper. You know, sir, the kind of help that you can give us on this thing can't be found just anywhere, and I am exceedingly grateful to you. I'll send a car for you first thing in the morning. All right. Mr. Hoover, you're welcome to stay in the White House if you care to. No, I understand if you'd rather stay in a hotel. Oh, speaking of hotels, you must know the folks who run the Waldorf Astoria up in New York rather well, living there and all. Well, I may need your help getting one of their flags. If my striped pants boys can't do it, I may be calling on you. All right, sir. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. Now, there goes one reason that I believe Congress should pass legislation designating ex-presidents honorary members of Congress. They would have every right as every other legislator except the right to vote. But that way we would get the wisdom and the benefit of their wisdom on matters that beset this country. And I tell you, if we don't get that kind of wisdom, we are just wasting one very valuable natural resource. Now, of course, we'd have to limit their right to filibuster, particularly if they were members of the opposite party. But I tell you, if any of us old birds ever got to filibustering, you'd have to have a pulmotor and a physician in attendance. You know, it amazes me what this job of mine does to doctors. A man no sooner gets his hand off the Bible than every doctor in the country wants to get down here and be the president's personal physician. I gave the job to the one man who simply did not want it, Wallace Graham. And I only got Wally to do it because I promised him that he'd have all of Walter Reed Hospital to operate on. Now, I was ailing one time, nothing serious, but I was ailing. And Wally got a call from a very famous doctor, a man named Chevalier Jackson. He was from the Temple Medical School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And he was famous because he had invented a thing called a bronchoscope. Now, it's just a tube you stick down people's throats so you can look around in their chest area. But he and his staff were frantic to get down here to Washington to give me what's called a bronchoscopy. So he called Wally, and Wally didn't want to insult the eminent doctor, so he put him on hold, and he came in and he told me, and I said, Wally, did you tell him what the problem was? And he said, no, Mr. President, I didn't have time. The man is practically on a plane on the way down here now. So I had the call transferred in here to me. Dr. Jackson? Harry Truman. Well, very well, bro. I just molded my own. Say, I know you're a busy man, and you'd probably like to get the story from the horse's mouth. Uh-huh. All right, well, I don't know how you folks operate, but I assume before you start on a journey, you'd like to know where you're going? All right, so you'd like to have that tube pointed in the right direction, would you? Well, Dr. Jackson, if you could look at my other end, I'd be happy to have you take a peek, because all I've got is a good old-fashioned case of diarrhea, Dr. Jackson. Dr. Jack. That was the last we heard of the eminent doctor. You know, I think the man who suffered the most physical pain in this office was Thomas Jefferson. See, he experienced excruciating migraine headaches. He had a psychological problem between his heart and his mind because he was in constant conflict about what he had written in the Constitution. You see, during his presidency, he did virtually nothing to destroy the institution of slavery, which he firmly believed should be abolished. Now, his migraines only ended when he left the presidency, but he lived his own personal civil war for the rest of his life, and I think it only ended with his death. His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, this was a man. I don't think a day goes by in this office that I don't wonder at one time or another how Franklin Roosevelt might be minding the store. Oh, yes, Mr. Roosevelt, you were a tough man to follow. More than once I've heard myself referred to as his accidency. How do I like the job? Well, the pay's pretty good, and there's certainly lots to do, but no matter what you do, there's always some son of a bitch who won't like it. Well, cigarettes, well, I don't use them myself, but I must keep some here for visiting ex-presidents. Here we go. There you go, sir. You know, my Surgeon General tells me that these things may be causing lung cancer and a lot of other things that are killing people these days. Well, that's right. Can't hurt you now. What do I think of Winston Churchill? Well, I think he's a fine gentleman and a great statesman. Stalin? Well, that's a different cup of tea. But I will say this about old Uncle Joe, though. He is one most dedicated, creative, industrious liar. You know, when I went to Potsdam to meet him, well, you know how it is. I got all decked out in my tuxedo, my preacher coat, my high hat, my low hat, my hard hat. Well, hard hats are mandatory when you're negotiating with the Russians. Anyway, when I got there, Stalin drank vodka the entire time. And I was absolutely amazed by this man's ability to hold his liquor. About the fourth day, I reached over and I picked up his glass and I took a sip. White wine. The bomb. Well, you know, I didn't know about the damn thing until you left us and Secretary Stinson came in and briefed me on it. I found out the thing worked after I got to Potsdam and I told Stalin about it. He just shrugged his shoulders like he'd known about it all along, which the son of a bitch probably did. Churchill said that I had no choice but to drop it immediately and end the war. Well, my general said that we could expect over 1 million casualties on both sides if we invaded the mainland of Japan. Options. I didn't have any options. I just dropped the first one. We heard nothing. I dropped the second one, and they capitulated. Did it bother me? Well, Mr. Roosevelt, let me put it to you like this. If I had to make the same decision tomorrow, I would do the same damn thing if I thought that it would end the war. And let me tell you something else. I've been waiting very, very patiently for someone to apologize for Pearl Harbor. You know, it's a damn shame that you couldn't be there to sign that final Potsdam communique. Well, thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you. Oh, incredible, absolutely. That's exactly what I thought. That Winston Churchill would be voted out of office in the middle of a major war by that little bird Attlee? You know, no, he took it very, very hard. But he never lost his touch. When he found out the election results, he called me and he said, "Harry, remember one thing about Clement Attlee. There's a lot less there than meets the eye." And I said, well, he always seemed like a modest little guy to me. And he said, "Well, Harry, he's got a lot to be modest about." Am I going to run again? Hell, I haven't run yet. You know, sometimes the pressures in that office get just a little borderline. And when that happens, I like to try to get home to Independence, Missouri, just as often as I possibly can. You know, kind of do a little bit of quiet thinking, put things in perspective, kind of just pull things down a bit. But when I get there, I find that I do a lot less pulling than I do pushing this blamed lawnmower. Good morning! Good morning! Well, great to be home on such a lovely Sunday morning. Sue Gentry, how are you? Let's go through it. Sue Gentry, oh, you look just grand. The fence? Well, the Secret Service put it up, Sue, to protect me from what? I do not know. What am I doing mowing the lawn on a Sunday, Sue? Well, the boss asked me to mow the lawn. You know, grass grows the same on Sunday as any other day. If I was on wages, I'd be on double time. Well, you gotta go to church, of course you do, and you look just grand. Just grand. Have a good praise. I've got to mow the lawn, Sue! You know, I found out a long time ago that if you don't want to do something, do it on a Sunday. That way the boss will think you've tarnished the Sabbath and she'll never ask you to do it again. Well, you wait. It's going to work out that way. You'll see. Well, takes time. You know, I've always been sort of a Lightfoot Baptist myself. Most of my family were Baptists because they thought that Baptists had the inside track to happiness after the grave. I must have the radio on. You know, speaking of relatives, my favorite relative had to be my grandfather, Solomon Young. He was quite a man. He was very independent and he hated hypocrites. I remember as a young boy, he came to me and he said, "Harry, if you ever run into a man who howls too loud on Saturday night and prays too loud on Sunday morning, you run home and lock your front door immediately." Well, I found that out when I had my first job down at Jim Clinton's drugstore down on the square. I was about 9 years old. And I used to go in at 6:30 in the morning, and I'd sweep up every day, and I'd clean out the medicine bottles from the day before. And I have to tell you, it was quite an education for a 9-year-old to see all of the anti-saloon leaders, the churchgoers, who'd come in the morning to get an eye-opener from Jim Clinton. Now, he kept the booze in the back in the medicine department and charged them 10 cents an ounce. Well, they'd knock one back, and then they'd look through this little hole to make sure that nobody had seen them before they left. And that was my first brush with phonies, and I've never had any use for them since. I've always favored the rough old boys. Now, if they wanted to knock one back, they just walked into any saloon down on the square. And I just never thought that any real man had to hide behind a bunch of damn medicine bottles when he wanted to strike a blow for liberty. Now, there are three things in this life that will ruin a man: power, money, and infidelity. Now, if a man can accept power as a gift, a temporary thing that comes from someone else, well, he's going to be fine. But if he thinks for one moment that he is the source of that power, well, that'll ruin him every time. And if a man makes too much money too early in life, it tends to separate him from the rest of the human race, who has to work most of their lives just to earn a living. And if a man is unfaithful to his family, well, that'll ruin him. Because if you've got the right partner in this life, you're not going to have too much trouble. But if all you're looking to do is get some honey on your stinger, well, you're in a hell of a fix anyway. On that last one there, if you read the history, you'll find I'm right. I've had to wear these blame things all my life. I had a bad case of diphtheria when I was 10 years old. Nearly ruined my eyesight. Wasn't very athletic as a boy. Not the boss. She was the real tomboy in the family. She played ball with all the kids, and I, well, they wouldn't let me play. I had to umpire. And she could outwhistle any kid on the block. And I'll tell you something else about that. She's very modest about her accomplishments. She was the shot put champion of Independence High School. Now that's the truth. My mother got me interested in piano and reading at a very early age. She was a lovely woman. She was very gentle. Her name was Martha. She was very musical, very artistic, and she was a college graduate. She flaunted the Baptists by attending dances. Now, she was a real Lightfoot Baptist. Now, my father, John Truman, he was a rather short, feisty man who used to like to knock people's hats off when they weren't looking. They called him the Bantam Cock. Now, he had absolutely no use for book learning on this earth. He quit school at an early age, and he told his father he wanted to be a mule trader. Well, Grandfather Truman said he didn't think that was a very lofty thing for a man to aspire to, but if he had his heart set on it, to go ahead and always tell the truth, and nobody would believe him. Well, my mother wanted me to attend college, and I wanted to more than anything on this earth, but my father suffered from some financial setbacks, and I had to go to work, timekeeping for the Santa Fe Railroad. Oh, I think the women are about to deliver me from my bondage. Yes, boss, but watch the mower, dear, watch the mower. What's that? I embarrassed your mother? Well, how did I do that, dear? No, oh, no, she's not on the warpath, is she, Bess? Well, Aunt, I wouldn't have done it if I thought that. No, oh, no, she's not at that again. Look, Bess, tell her. Would you just tell her I'm going to run if I can't beat Tom Dewey, for heaven's sakes? Try this on her. Would you tell her I'm gonna win, all right? Would you try that? All right, yeah. I will bring the mower in right away. You bet I will, boss. Thank you, boss. Well, what'd I tell you? Never fails. Now, her mother, Madge Gates Wallace, she was known as the most stylish woman in Independence, Missouri. And her father, George Porterfield Gates, well, he amassed a sizable fortune milling Queen of the Pantry flour. Now, I've always known that I'm not exactly Mother Wallace's ideal son-in-law, but that's okay. That's all right, because if she never did anything else but have Bess, well, that's good enough for me. You know the old saying, behind every successful man is a proud wife and a surprise mother-in-law. Well, that's the case here. She's a pistol, though. I tell you, she has a mind of her own. I remember when the Secret Service put this fence up around the house. Did I tell you this is Mother Wallace's house? Well, it is. Well, the first time she saw it, the manure hit the fan. She said, Nobody is going to put up a fence around my house without my permission. Nobody. Not no president, not no government, nobody. Well, she finally calmed down, but I tell you that every time she walks through that gate there, this fence cringes. I once asked my Secretary of the Treasury, John Snyder, what this thing cost. And he told me $1,500. Sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? Well, a man could get rich in my job if he really wanted to, but I found out a long time ago that when you play ball with the big money boys, you pay. You pay. Now, don't get me wrong, I have done my favors for friends throughout the years like any other influence peddler in D.C., but I have never gotten anything for myself out of it. And I'll tell you something else. No man can get rich in politics unless he's a crook. cannot be done. Cannot be done. I got into politics in a very strange way through the military. I was in the National Guard in Missouri before the First World War, and one of my fellow officers was a man named Jim Pendergast. Now, Jim and I became very, very good friends, and if it wasn't for Jim, I would not be in this job today. When I got over to France, I inherited an artillery unit called Battery D. Now, they were known as the Dizzy D's. And they were known as the Dizzy D's because they were the hardest drinking, wildest bunch of Irishmen that ever staggered around the streets of Kansas City. They had two officers before me. One of them was discharged from the service because he couldn't handle the Dizzy D's, and the other one had a nervous breakdown. I'll never forget the first time I laid eyes on that bunch. Oh, they were waiting for me. They thought I was going to chew them out, but I fooled them. Dismissed! Accept the non-coms. I said accept the non-coms. So, boys, they tell me you're known as the Dizzy D's. Well, that D has got to stand for dumb because that's sure than hell what you all are. You know, all you've done since you've been to France is drink, fight amongst yourselves, and go to Mass. I don't think there's a real fighter in this bunch. Now, you wait a minute. I don't have to get along with you, but you sure than hell have to get along with me. Now, every single one of you is responsible for the discipline in your squad and section. And if there's anybody who thinks they can't handle it, will you step forward right now? And I will punch you in the nose. Dismissed. We got along. As a matter of fact, when Battery D got into combat, they acquitted themselves very, very valorously. But there was one time, I'll never forget this. We were pinned down by German artillery fire, and one of my sergeants, well, he panicked and he ran to the rear. The next thing I know, my entire battalion is on the run. And that's when I learned the greatest counter-offensive weapon in warfare: cussing. Come back here, you goddamn mackerel snappers! You dirty yellow Irish sons of bitches, you get back here! Up your Irish asses! You're not Irish. You're acting like a bunch of goddamn limeys. Yes, you. I'm talking to you, Walsh, and you, O'Neill, and you too, all you Irish bastards. Yeah, why don't you go hide under the Queen's petticoats? Don't you come at me, Walsh. Don't you come at me. The Krauts are that way. Get on the guns. Get on the guns. Up the Irish. Up the Irish. We called that the Battle of Who Run. When I got back from France, I married Bess. Her mother had some misgivings about it, but we went ahead and we did it anyway. And we moved into Mother Wallace's house, where we've lived ever since. Now, when I was courting Bess, I must have written her a silo full of letters. And one day after I became president, I walked into the living room in Independence, and Bess was on her knees in front of the fireplace, and she was burning the letters. And I said she oughtn't to do that. And she said, why not? I read them. And I said, well, Bess, think of history. And she said, I am, and she just kept right on burning. I'd been back from France about 2 days when I ran into Eddie Jacobson on the streets of Kansas City, and we shook hands and we went into business together. We opened a haberdashery shop, and every now and then some of the boys from Battery D would stop by and we'd swap lies about how we won the war. And one of those men was Jim Pendergast. Now he's the fellow I mentioned to you earlier. Now Eddie and I did well in business until the Depression of 1922, and then we had to go out of business. Eddie went off selling shirts on the road with some other fella. And well, before I could find any kind of a job, I found myself running for county judge in Jackson County, Missouri. Now that's not really a proper kind of judge. It's more like a county commissioner in Missouri. And I had got the backing of the Pendergast political organization. I should know how to do this better as a haberdasher. I got the backing of the Pendergast political organization because Tom Pendergast, who was the big political boss, he'd heard from his nephew Jim Pendergast that I was one man in the war whose men didn't want to shoot him. So they gave me their backing, and I found myself running around in my old beat-up Dodge, and I was engaged in a new war now. It's kind of war where you shoot from the lip. Well, I won that election, and I think I won it because I had more relatives in Jackson County than anybody else. And I was broke. And most folks were broke, and naturally they wanted to go with a fellow who was in the same fix. And after I got elected, my first job was to build roads. At that time in Jackson County, there were more mud roads in Jackson County than any other county in the United States. And when you use the word, you say the word road building, it's as if you were a female moth and you had just unloaded your entire supply of bombacol into the air in one spray. Immediately, you would have 1 trillion males heading in your direction. And every one of those males would be a road contractor. And I got my first taste of them when Tom Pendergast, the big boss, paid me a surprise visit after we passed the bond issue to build the roads. Well, Mr. Pendergast, for heaven's sake, good, what an honor. No, please, come in, please. All right, Tom, all right, please come in. No, I don't. Mr. Hall, Mr. Braden, Mr. Kelly? Well, no, I don't know them, but I've heard of them. So Tom, what can I do for you? Please, fellas, make yourselves at home. What can I do for you? Well, yes, I've heard they're your supporters, but Tom, I don't believe they're very good road builders. Well, their bids were too damn high for one thing, and the roads they build, well, they're pie crust road builders, Tom, and by that I mean the roads they build, they're crumbling like pie crust. I've seen them. Well, I know they pay their taxes here, but that doesn't entitle them to the money, does it? No, I'm going to award the job to a bunch from out of state. Well, the bids were lower, and the roads they build hold up. I know, because I've seen them. Leaving so soon, gentlemen? Well, all right, fine. Come back anytime. It's the same for everyone. Well, Tom, I guess that's the way it's going to be. No, I'm not going to apologize. No, Mr. Pendergast, I guess you don't understand me very well. No, I don't think I'm being contrary. I think that I'm being businesslike. At least I hope to God I am. No, I don't think you're interfering. I just hope this might be the beginning of an understanding. Well, all right then. I'll do just that. I'll do what I think is right. Shortly after that, it came out that Pendergast and those 3 men were secret business partners. And they had lost a considerable amount of money by my decision. But he never interfered with my work at that time or at any other time, even when he was in serious trouble and needed help desperately. And that happened in 1939 when he was indicted for income tax evasion and sent to prison. His entire political organization fell apart. And it couldn't have come at a worse time for me because in 1940, I had to decide whether or not I was going to run for a second term as United States Senator. I was just finishing up my first term, and I wanted to more than anything in the world because I believed that the happiest times of my political life were spent on the floor of the United States Senate. And I also believed that I had accomplished some considerable good for the common people of Missouri, and I became convinced that I had accomplished some good things for the folks of Missouri when every metropolitan newspaper in the state, save one, was opposed to my re-election. Now, also in 1940, the head of my party, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he withdrew his support from me. See, he was running for a 3rd term, and I had backed legislation in the Senate to limit presidential terms to 2. So naturally, he withdrew his support. And he threw it to a fellow named Lloyd Stark, who at the time was the governor of Missouri. Now, he was a very wealthy man in his own right. He had the backing of all the big money boys, and as I say, all the newspapers, and every Democratic organization in every prominent Democratic state. Well, I had 2 choices. I could fold my tent, steal away, and drop out of politics for the rest of my life, maybe, or I could get off my ass and do something about it. So, I chose the latter course. I sent Roosevelt a wire, and I said that I was going to run if I got 1 vote, mine. And I knew I needed one that, of course. I hoped I could count on labor because I had backed some really important pro-labor legislation in the Senate, and I hope the boys might remember and be grateful. But I needed even more than that. I needed absolutely every vote that I could get in that election. And there comes a time in every man's life when he needs to stand up and be counted, to stand up and say what's right. At that time in Missouri, there were 2 million mules, and each of them was worth about $90. there were 245,000 Negroes, and some people thought they weren't worth anything. Well, they were wrong. It was wrong, and I said so. And I said it on the courthouse steps in Sedalia, Missouri, on June 15th, 1940. Oh, it was a blistering hot summer day. And Sedalia at the time was a hotbed of the Ku Klux Klan, and so there wasn't a black face in the crowd. Friends and neighbors, can you hear me? All right, well, Howard, could you move up on something or just come closer? Yeah, I won't be long. I'm not going to keep you here but a minute in this heat, but no, I won't be long. Before I go, I just want to get something off my chest, and then I'm going to move on. But before I do, I want to say very simply that I believe in the brotherhood of man, and not just the brotherhood of white man. No, oh, Howard, people, would you let me finish? For heaven's sakes, would you let me finish, please? Let me finish. Now, I believe in the brotherhood of all men before the law. Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do, and I think you do too, or you must, if you believe in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of the United States. Now, in recent years, every one of us here knows, we all know that the movement of the Negroes from the country to the big cities has speeded up considerably. And that's due, of course, to the beatings and the lynchings and the mob violence. Well, since the Negro has gotten to the big city, he's been virtually ignored. He's been forced into segregated slums. He has virtually none of the necessities of life. He doesn't have any job opportunities. And I believe that as free men, he is entitled to at least that much. No, wait. You may disagree with me, some of you here, but you've got to agree with this. If we continue to push the Negro down into the depths of degradation, the white man has got to go with him. Yes, he does. He does, because the law of compensation is going to apply. If you are going to hold a black man in the gutter, there has got to be a white man in the gutter holding him there. I won that election by 8,000 votes. Now, there's been a lot of progress in civil rights, I believe, but I think that the Negro still has to walk too fine of a line just to get by in this society. You know, it reminds me of an old black gentleman I knew down in Granville, Missouri. And he told me one day that his boss had given him a bottle of liquor. And I said, "How was it, John?" And he said, "Well, just about right, Mr. Truman." And I said, "What do you mean, just about right, John?" He said, "Well, if it was any better, he wouldn't have given it to me. And if it was any worse, I wouldn't have drunk it." Now, as I say, the Ku Klux Klan was a power in my area. And they could make or break a politician. Oh, indeed they could. They played a very significant role in my election in 1924. See, they were a rough bunch, but they were only rough when they were in a bunch. They were racists. They were congenital racists. And their philosophy, I believed, was the absolute ultimate in vulgarity. This was their shield. Behind this thing, they felt safe. This, of course, is a torch. Now, it was meant to give man light, but in their hands, it was often witness to beatings, lynchings, and murders. A bunch of the Klan boys came to see me in my office before the election, and they told me they had a problem with me. They said they understood that my grandfather, Solomon Young, was a Jew, but they would give me dispensation. See, if I would join them, they would back me in the coming election. Well, I looked at those miserable creatures, and I told them that my grandfather, Solomon Young, was not a Jew. But if he were, I would be very proud to say so. And that they could take their support and they could stick it where the good Lord intended all such things to be stuck. Well, we parted enemies. Thank God. But, you know, if a man stays in life long enough, in public life long enough, he can expect almost anything can happen to him. And when his life gets threatened, that's where you have to draw the line. And that's what happened to me, because the Klan threatened to kill me. Now, Bess and I had just had our beautiful little Margaret, and so it upset us very, very deeply. But I knew I had to face this head on. That was the only way to do it. And I heard that the boys were having one of their Klan powwows up in Lee's Summit, Missouri. And I thought that might be the place to confront them. I wanted to go alone, of course, but Eddie Jacobson insisted on going with me. Now, that was a very, very courageous thing for Eddie to do, because Eddie was something that the Klan hates more than anything on this earth. Eddie was a Jew. Evening, boys. I understand some of you threatened to kill me. Well, if you want to take your lives in your hands, let's have a go at it right now. So you're the yellow scum who's going to tell me that I can't hire a black, or a Catholic, or a Jew, or anyone else I please. Well, as farm kin, you have got to know that is pure, undiluted bullshit! That's what it is! Because I am going to hire anyone I goddamn well please. Those jobs are for all the people and not just a few hooded bastards like you. Shame on you! Shame on you! Calling yourselves the invisible nation. Why the good Lord ought to strike you from the face of this earth. I'm gonna leave you now, you supreme people, but before I go, I want to tell you what Eddie Jacobson said on the way up here. He said that whoever organized your courageous gang had to be a Jew. Because only a Jew could sell you silly idiots a $1.95 nightshirt for $16. Eddie and I are gonna go find a saloon now, and we're gonna go strike a blow for liberty. I lost that election. Oh, they beat me. But I was never prouder to lose anything in my life. Now there's the whistle that was the envy of every kid on the block. She can't put the shot any longer, but she sure has a come-hither whistle, doesn't she? That's my signal to stop jawing with you on this beautiful Sunday morning. Now, I'm going to get an earful when I get inside, but it sure beats cutting grass. Mr. Paul Hume, music critic, The Washington Post. Mr. Hume, I've just read your lousy review of my daughter Margaret's concert last night, and I've come to the conclusion that you are an 8-ulcer man on 4-ulcer pay. When you write such poppycock as that, it shows conclusively that you are off the beam, and that at least 4 of your ulcers are working overtime. I hope to meet you. And when I do, you're going to need a new nose, plenty of beefsteaks for black eyes, and perhaps a jock-strap glove. Say, Rose, would you bring me in 2 3-cent stamps, please? No, Rose, I don't want any lectures on my postage privileges. Just bring me in the stamps, please. Oh, bring your book. Bring your book, Rose. Thank you very much. This is the kind of day that starts out with all the right things happening to make it all go wrong. This morning I got the communiques from Korea, and we are doing very, very badly over there. And then I had to tell Margaret about the death of our beloved Charlie Ross. He died yesterday at his desk unexpectedly, and he was Margaret's most special, most beloved friend. When I had to announce it to the press, well, I broke down and I cried like a baby. And then I had to read this damn thing. You know, sometimes some of these critic fellas are just a little rough, but I was a father before I became president, and I am going to be a father when I leave this office. And that's the way it's going to be, Mr. Hume, you son of a bitch! No, not you, Rose. No, good heavens, no. Rose, no, please come in and sit down, Rose. Rose, no, I just a few things, some dictation, all right, Rose? I just got a couple of short letters for you, huh? All right, dear. All right, listen to, now the first one is to a congressman down in Louisiana. Congressman Hebert, Edward Hebert, Hebert. H-E-B-E-R-T, that's Hebert. Well, all right, Hebert, all right, Hebert. All right, Congressman, yesterday my staff brought me a memo to the effect that you had called upon the churches of the land to set aside 1 day a week to be my wisdom and my guidance. Well, Congressman, while I am most grateful to you for your concern for me and for your possible connection with the Almighty, From what I know of the man, he's got a hell of a lot more important things to do. Oh, and sign that God's humble servant, Harry S. Truman. What? You want to cut out hell of a lot? Oh, all right, Rose, if it makes it easy for you, go ahead. Just cut it out, doesn't matter. All right, now the second one is to Senator Bishop from Colorado. Dear Senator, not only would I not name John L. Lewis ambassador to the Soviet Union, I wouldn't name the old bastard dog catcher. Don't you want to cut old bastard, Rose? You don't? You want to cut dog catcher? All right, well, maybe Attorney General. Would that be better? No, just as bad. All right, well, just leave it. Leave it the way it is. Peggy, would you get me Sam Rayburn, please? Say, Rose, there's a story going around about me. Some old party hen is supposed to have come up to Bess at some party and said, Mrs. Truman, can't you get the president to stop using the word manure? And Bess is supposed to have replied, it's taken me 40 years to get him to use that word. I hope that's the kind of reply the boss would. Sam, it's Harry. Sam, look, Sam, I'm getting a lot of pressure from those oil boys down your way, and it's got to stop, Sam. No, they're trying to get their hands on the Thailand oil reserves. And there's no way they're going to do it. Well, that's right, they belong to all the people and not just a few greedy bastards in a few states. Exactly, they just wind up selling it back to us and the government would pay through the nose for something we already own. So would you tell them no sale, Sam? Would you do that? Say, Sam, when are you coming over to see me? I got a new supply of wild turkey in. Remember, Sam, only one thing worse than a drinking man, one who doesn't. All right, look forward to seeing you. Bye-bye. You know, when you're in this job, I've got, you've got to keep your eye on the money hungry. I tell you, if they had a chance, they would scar this nation from one end to the other if they had a bulldozer big enough. And we'd let them get away with it. We'd wind up being neon-lighted concrete junkyards. Concrete America is what it would be. Ugly squalor. And ugliness drags all of us down, every single one of us. Beauty lifts us up. You know, when I get depressed, and I do from time to time, just despair of the human race, I go and I look at fellows like Franz Hals and Rubens, Da Vinci, and Rembrandt. Rembrandt's Descent from the Cross is my favorite, I think. And music, Chopin and Bach. We all know it lifts our spirits, and ugliness just drags us down. I think that the ugliest invention in human history would be warfare. Wouldn't you agree? I certainly would. Now, everybody has a bad time in war, and presidents are no exception. You know, they not only get hell from the enemy, they catch hell from their own generals. I certainly caught hell from one of my generals. He just couldn't get it through his bulletproof head that, as Clemenceau once so wisely said, that war is much too serious a matter to be left to the generals. Now Lincoln, he had his problem general. His general was George B. McClellan. McClellan was a very interesting man. He had been president of an Illinois railroad before the Civil War, and Lincoln, as a young lawyer, worked for McClellan. Now, when Lincoln became president, McClellan just couldn't accept the fact that Lincoln was no longer an employee of his. As a matter of fact, McClellan acted more like the president of the United States than McClellan did, but McClellan, he suffered from conceit, which is God's gift to little men. Now, Lincoln was much too big a man, of course, to be bothered by McClellan's fantasies. He once said of McClellan that he reminded him of the man whose horse got to kicking and he got his hoof caught in the stirrup. And he looked down and he said, "See here, you want to get on? I'll get off." But I've always had a very easy time understanding why the military sometimes has difficulty understanding the workings of a free society. You see, they have lived in a very dictatorial, regimented setup. Now, the military was never intended to be a debating society. You want to debate, get into politics. There's lots to debate about it. If you got something to say, even if you've got nothing to say, you know, it's amazing how many politicians that the less they say, the longer they stay. And I just don't understand that. But I've never had problems with the military getting into politics. It's just that sometimes some of the generals want to start at the very top. And sometimes we're damn fools enough to let them do just that. Now, my problem, General, was Douglas MacArthur. Now, MacArthur had been out of the country for 15 long years, and we all know how tall a man can grow in that amount of time. I always had the greatest amount of respect for MacArthur's military ability, and I even understood the role he was playing for the Asians, that of the deity. But I could not allow him to continue to disregard and disobey the instructions and the decisions of the United States government, your elected government. Oh, our problems with MacArthur started long before Korea. They started when Japan surrendered. See, MacArthur thought that all decisions relative to Japan should emanate with him in Tokyo and not with the President of the United States. He made proclamations all the time about our occupational policies without ever consulting me or anybody else in Washington. And I have to tell you that it became rather embarrassing, to say the least, as President of the United States, to find out what our policies toward Japan were from the morning newspapers. Yes, Rose? Oh, General Marshall's there. All right, I'll be right with him. That's General Marshall waiting out there. He's usually a very punctual man, but this morning he's a half an hour early. I gave him some dispatches to read last night that I had exchanged with MacArthur down through the years. I want to get his opinion on them. Now, I've said some harsh things about the military there, but I want you to know that that man in the waiting room is one of the most dedicated Americans it is ever in my privilege to know. And another one is Omar Bradley. Now, General Bradley is the finest, most brilliant field commander this country has ever produced. And both of us are very deeply, all of those gentlemen are very deeply involved in this entire Korean situation with me, and we're all deeply concerned that it might erupt into World War III. Good morning, General. Good to see you. Please have a seat. No, you prefer to stand? Well, that's all right. So what did you think of the communiques? Yeah, absolutely. I agree. They are incredible. Atchison? Well, Atchison agrees. He says that he thinks that we have to let MacArthur know once and for all who the President of the United States is. Harriman? Well, Harriman agrees, You know, force. That's all the man wants to use. I know, I think General Clark said it best when he said that force did not mean to shoot the works, but rather to see that the enemy attack failed. Well, you would have fired him 2 years ago if you knew what you knew today. Well, what about General Bradley? Would you ask him, General? Would you ask him and let me know what he says? All right, let me know. No, I have no idea on this earth how it came to this pass with MacArthur. I mean, in my mind, really, I have said 100 times, what did you not do that you should have done to get through to the man to make him understand? I even flew 7,000 miles to Wake Island. I just felt that we had to clear the air between us. When I got there, his plane was circling the island, waiting for me to land first. He said he'd had some mechanical difficulties, but I knew what he was up to. He was a play actor. Oh, MacArthur was a play actor. So I told my pilot to tell his pilot to get that damn plane on the ground, and he did. His mechanical difficulties seemed to clear up rather miraculously. But as I was saying, he's a play actor. He was waiting for me. And there he was with the battered cap, the sunglasses, the big pipe, and the unbuttoned shirt. But honestly, I've never believed in dressing down a man in front of people. You see, no matter what it is that a man has done that's wrong, if you take his dignity away from him, he's got nothing left. So I suggested that MacArthur and I take a walk along the beach, alone. General, you know, I don't much care what you think of me as Harry Truman. You wait a minute. What you think of me as Harry Truman, but I do care. I do care what you think of me as President of the United States, because God damn it, that is what I am. The folks back home elected me to this job, and they expect me to be the boss. And as long as a frog is a reptile with edible eggs, that is what I mean to be. Now you have got to stop this talk about going into China. Oh, and this re-engaging Shanghai Shek is absolutely ridiculous. His men couldn't fight their way out of a Hong Kong whorehouse. And you know what would happen if they did get back in this thing? Well, he and that madam of his, well, I'll tell you what would happen. They would use it as an excuse to rub us blind again. Yes, I said again. Well, they've stolen $2 billion of the $30 billion we've already given them. Oh, you didn't know that, General. Well, it's high time that you did. And you have got to stop making these goddamn statements that are enraging that China lobby back in the country. And I'm sick and tired of that goddamn Jenner and McCarthy and that little bird from California, whatever his name is, calling my administration communist. It's got to stop. Those men are dangerous liars. They are the enemies of freedom. They're reckless fanatics who could destroy us all. Now, we have got a big enough problem just trying to stop this whole thing from blowing up in our faces. All right, General. Well, do you think the Chinese are going to intervene? You don't. Well, do you see any massive buildup up there at all? You don't. Well, General, what if they do intervene? You could cope with it. They'd be inviting a slaughter? Well, General, I guess that's going to have to be good enough for me. He said that he would have the boys home by Christmas. Of course, he neglected to check with the Chinese, and Christmas meaning absolutely nothing to them is when they attacked. They came across the border by the thousands, and to put it bluntly, they beat the living hell out of us. MacArthur announced publicly that he could have won it if I had let him do what he wanted to do. Well, we almost lost Korea, but we held on, and we turned the 8th Army around in a counteroffensive. But that man, MacArthur, despite repeated instructions to talk to me first, talk to everybody else, he called for a blockade of the Chinese mainland. He wanted to bomb her industrial centers. I tell you, it was very embarrassing as President of the United States, while I was trying to negotiate a ceasefire with the enemy, to have one of my subordinates calling for an all-out attack on the enemy. And listen to this. While I was in the middle of these very, very delicate negotiations through the United Nations, at the same time, MacArthur was calling for the North Koreans to surrender to him personally. Well, I could not allow this insubordination to continue. Because if I had, I would have surrendered civilian control of your government to the military. And I was not about to do that. Well, and the last straw came when MacArthur sent a letter to Joseph Martin, the minority leader of the House of Representatives. And Martin read that letter on the floor of the House with MacArthur's permission. And in that letter, he accused my administration. He said that my administration should be indicted for the murder of thousands of American boys if we were not in Korea to win it. Well, the point was that we were not in Korea to win anything. We were there to stop something, namely aggression. The United Nations forces were there for one reason: to preserve the peace of mankind for all the world. Yep. Oh, General Marshall. General Bradley agrees? Fire the son of a bitch. It bothered me. Bothered me very, very deeply. No, I always knew that MacArthur was for America. We were all for America. Yet sometimes it's amazing that this country survives, even though some of her people go at her from time to time, sometimes with a meat axe, and always in the name of trying to preserve her. MacArthur could not understand that his problem was not with Harry Truman. His problem was with the President of the United States. He could not see that it had any constitutional significance whatsoever. Now, I got myself into a constitutional briar patch shortly after that when I tried to take over the steel mills in a labor dispute. I was really afraid that if they closed, it would hurt our Korean War effort. And the Supreme Court said that I had no right to, none whatsoever. And they shut me down just like anybody else. War or no war, the Constitution prevailed. And that's as it should be. The law is for everybody in this country. Now, every administration has its lawbreakers, and mine was unfortunately no exception. I had a few bad apples. They weren't bad ones, but when they were found out, they were out in the street. Now, I had troubles with General Eisenhower. I must tell you that on Ike's inauguration day, things were so cool between us that I thought that Bess and I were going to have to walk to Union Station just to get the train back home to Missouri. But that's all right. That's all right, because that's politics, and that goes hand in hand with politics. But the thing that bothered me about Eisenhower was that when he got into politics, he seemed to lose his guts. And it came home to me when I saw him in a photograph, smiling and shaking hands with William Jenner. Now, that was Senator William Jenner of Indiana. And you may remember that Senator Jenner called General Marshall a traitor to this country. Now General Marshall was responsible for Eisenhower's entire career But Ike never opened his mouth on that one time. Well, to be fair, he did try one time, a very weak attempt at defending Marshall. He went up to Wisconsin one time to make a speech. Now, Wisconsin at the time was a stronghold of one Joseph R. McCarthy. And when he got up to Milwaukee, some of McCarthy's goons got to him, and they convinced Eisenhower to delete a section of his speech that was in defense of Marshall. And I have kept that deletion through the years. The words are on my desk. And I want you to hear them. I want you to hear what General Eisenhower cut from his speech so as not to offend Mac the Knife. He was going to say, "Let me be quite specific. I know that charges of disloyalty have in the past been leveled at General George C. Marshall. I have been privileged for 35 years to know the General Marshall personally. I know him as a man and a soldier to be dedicated with singular selflessness and the profoundest patriotism to the service of America. And this is a sobering lesson in the way freedom must not be defended." Now, those are the words that Eisenhower deleted from his speech, and the topic of the speech that night was freedom. I have never been able to understand honestly how General Eisenhower could sacrifice one of the greatest living Americans, in my opinion, to curry favor with one of the worst political gangsters this country has ever known, Joseph McCarthy. I attacked the most lamentable mistake of the Almighty every chance I got. I had to because he said that my administration were men and women with lips of traitors. Now, when you keep your mouth shut about something like that, well, democracy simply will not work. Now, I had to take on McCarthy, and I knew it, and I wanted to pick my spot. And the spot I chose was Massachusetts, Boston, to be exact. For some reason I will never understand, McCarthy was always very popular up in Massachusetts. Even the Democrats were nervous. They said, "Take it easy on him, take it easy." Well, when I walked into that symphony hall that night, I was determined to give them one hell of a concert. Governor, Mr. Chairman, honored guests, it's a pleasure to be back in the city of Boston tonight, and I hope that if in the future I'm ever out of work and indigent, that you will be as warm with your hospitality at that time as you are tonight. Now, tonight, I would like to deal with a group of fanatics, and in particular one fanatic, who have enrolled in the so-called Great Republican Crusade of 1952. Now, this fanatic is employing a technique that was developed by one of the worst criminals in human history, a man named Adolf Hitler. And it's a technique known as the big lie. Now, you all know how that works. It's simply telling a lie so monstrous that it stuns the listener. And then you repeat it over and over and over again until finally it's accepted as the truth. Well, the big lie that this fanatic is telling about my administration is that it is soft on communism. It's a lie. It is a monstrous lie. And I state it tonight for the record publicly. Now, I want to say that the threat of communism is very real, not only in this country, but throughout the world. But my friends, we must never, ever allow that threat to make us lose our common sense or our confidence in ourselves, our confidence in each other, or our confidence in this great country. Because, my friends, it is just as easy for a communist to deceive a Republican as it is for a communist to deceive a Democrat. Now, I want to say that if there are any communists in my administration, when they are discovered, they will be thrown out. But I also want to state very, very clearly that they will not be thrown out without the due process of law and without sufficient evidence, because by God, I still believe in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, all of this uproar began when a Republican senator, a denizen of the political underworld, Joseph McCarthy, managed to get his hands on it. We don't know how he did it, but he managed to get his hands on some old, meaningless, out-of-date security investigations. Now, as I say, they were meaningless, they were out of date, they meant absolutely nothing. Yet, this irresponsible man dumped them all into the public record. Now, to this day, he has not been able to uncover one single communist, nor will he ever be able to uncover one single communist, because all that man carries in that bulging briefcase of his is a bottle of booze, and he manages to knock off about one bottle every day. Now, my friends, I tell you, this man must be stopped, and stopped now. Not one of us in this hall tonight, not one of us in this country, is safe from this irresponsible man, Joseph McCarthy. Why, all you gotta do is cross him. All you gotta do is disagree with him, and he will set out to destroy you with every means that he can find. My friends, as we sit here in this hall tonight, as I stand here in this podium, the reputations of good, decent, patriotic Americans are being butchered by this man, Joseph McCarthy. And it's an American tragedy. It is tragic. You know, I think the happiest time of my life was when I took a long train trip across the country, and I got to talk with about 15 million of you folks. It's a big country. You know, it reminds me of the old cowboy who rode his horse from California to New York. And when he got there, this tough Irish cop looked up at him and said, "Well, Hoot Gibson, just how big is this country?" And the old boy looked down at him and he said, "Well, just about as big as your butt can stand to ride it, mister." And you know, I always thought that the real problem with my opponent, Tom Dewey, was that he couldn't stay in the saddle long enough to let all you folks get a good look at him. Now, I tried to let as many of you as I possibly could hear me and see me. And as a matter of fact, my train trip across the country became known as the Whistle Stop Campaign. I tell you, we pulled into places in this country you forget people do. I remember one time we pulled into a place called Dexter, Iowa. You're not going to believe this, but there were 96,000 farmers waiting. It was 5:30 in the morning, and it was milking time. Now, they were waiting there very quietly to hear me talk, but I've got to tell you, you just don't get 96,000 farmers together at milking time without there being a lot of nervous cows and a hell of a run on buttermilk. Now, sometimes we made as many as 15 of those speeches a day, sitting around and talking to all you folks. And, you know, my opponent, he didn't talk to people. He talked to the experts. And every one of them said that I was going to lose by a landslide. And I've got to tell you, it caused some real grief and consternation on my campaign train. I remember one time a bright young speechwriter on my staff, Clark Clifford was his name, he came to me and he said, "Mr. President, I believe that you are headed for the gallows." And I said, "Oh, for heaven's sakes, Clark, the gallows are nothing more than a platform for the performance of miracle plays where the central actor is translated to heaven." And I was not about to climb those stairs to eternity. So we just kept at it, whistle stopping all the way until we got to the great state of Minnesota. Good morning. Good to see you. Thanks for coming out so early. I really appreciate that. That's a lovely family you got there. Oh, say that boy he might be president of the United States someday. So you pay attention, son. All right. People, good morning. This morning I would like to pay tribute to the great liberal spirit of the great state of Minnesota. And it's a spirit that derives from a very simple thing in this country, a thing called faith. Faith in yourselves, faith in each other, and faith in this great country of ours. Now, it's a type of faith, of course, that the Republican Party simply cannot understand. Oh, I know they got a platform, but it doesn't mean a thing. They're not going to tell you what they really believe. But by golly, I'm going to tell you what they really believe, because I've had a chance to watch that party from very close up for a very long time. Now, they'll tell you over and over, they have faith in the American farmer. You bet they do. Sure, but they're willing to let him go broke. And they say they have faith in the American home, but not public housing. And they say they want to extend Social Security benefits to more Americans. Says it right there in their platform. Yet the 80th Republican Congress just took 750,000 people and dropped their Social Security benefits. Now, do they really think that the American people are so foolish that they're going to believe poppycock like that? Oh, and they'll tell you that they believe in a minimum wage. You bet they do. The more minimumer, the better. And they'll tell you that they admire the American way of life, just so long as it doesn't spread to all the folks. And they'll tell you they admire the American government. Well, that's right. They admire it so much, they want to buy it. But we are going to tell them on election day, every single one of us, that this government is not for sale, not now, not at any price. What's that? No, sir. I don't give them hell. I just tell the truth on them, and it makes them feel like they're in hell. No. Oh, no, I'm just running again because I need to find a place to live again. Well, no, we've got a housing shortage in this country, and I don't want to be a burden on the community. No. What's that, man? How do I feel about speech making? Well, it's kind of like the man who was on his way to his dear wife's funeral, and the undertaker asked him if he'd mind riding in the same car with his mother-in-law to the cemetery, and he said, "Well, I'll do it, but it'll ruin my whole day." Well, that's kind of how I feel about it. What's that? Oh, well, folks, we got to get moving because we got 10 more stops today. But folks, before I go, I want to say one thing to you. In this election, in November, don't you dare vote for any political party. You vote for yourself. You vote for your self-interest. And that'll wind up being the Democratic Party. God bless you all. Shortly before that election, an expert came to see me. His name was Leslie Biffle. Now, he was a different kind of expert. Leslie had been the Secretary of the Senate for many, many years. And Leslie wasn't wired for sound like the Ropers or the Gallops. No, he wasn't connected to any kind of machine. What Leslie would do is he'd simply get decked out in some old coveralls, and he rode a springboard wagon pulled by 2 mules, and he posed as a chicken peddler. And he just went around and he talked to the folks. And when he came back, he said to me, "Mr. President, you've got nothing to worry about. The people are for you." Well, in that election, I did what most Americans did. I voted the straight Democratic ticket. My friends, that polling booth right there, that is the most valuable piece of real estate in this country. And if we ever sell it to anyone for any price, well, we can just forget about the whole thing. You know, my opponent did what most Americans didn't do in that election. He voted for the party that the experts said would win. And I have to tell you, there was so much crow eaten by experts after that election that the conservationists thought that the species might disappear from the face of the earth. Now, when I get back, on the way back to Washington, we stopped in St. Louis, and I had a chance to pick up the Chicago Daily Tribune, the world's greatest newspaper, by its own admission. And I got to read their banner headline.
Yeah.
And when I got back to Washington, my inauguration was very opulent. You see, the Republican Congress thought that Tom Dewey was going to win. So they appropriated a ton of money for his inaugural feast. I tell you, the town was so full of liquor, if it could have walked, it would have staggered. You know, most politicians have songs written for them, and most of them, they're pretty bad. But I found out that Tom Dewey had a song written for his inaugural ball, and it's quite a catchy little tune. It's too bad he never used it. And it's too bad he can't be here to sing it for you, because he has a rather beautiful church tenor voice. So I'm gonna try to render it for you, in the best sense of that word, of course. I'm gonna try to render it for you, but you're just gonna have to put up with my rather quavering whiskey Missouri baritone. Congratulations, Tom Dewey. You won by a landslide today. Through thick and through thin, we knew you would win, 'cause who'd ever vote to let Truman stay in? Congratulations, Tom Dewey. Your Republican dreams have come true. Here's a victory roar for President number 34. The White House is waiting for you. Let's take a a walk. Let's take a walk. I like to take a walk every day if I possibly can. Kind of get the cobwebs out. Morning, boys. Good to see you. No. I like the press. No, I'm very fond of the press. It's amazing what a fella can learn about the press from the press about himself that he never knew before. You know, I agree with Thomas Jefferson. He said that if he had to choose between no government and no press, he would choose the former. And I agree with him 100%. Yes, I did. I heard that Nixon called Dean Acheson the Red Dean. Let me tell you something, son. If Acheson, Marshall, and I are traitors to this country, well, we are in one hell of a fix. And let me tell you something else. Richard Nixon is a no-good lying son of a bitch. Why, he can lie out of both sides of his mouth at the same time, and I tell you, if he ever caught himself telling the truth, he would tell a lie just to keep his hand in. All right, let's keep moving along, all right? President of the United States coming through. Gotta keep moving at 1:20 a minute. Say, boys, is there a place this way where we can strike a blow for liberty? There's not. Well, let's not go this way, then. What's that, Kennedy? Well, he's a good boy. But the father bothers me. Well, what father do you know can buy their sons West Virginia? No. It has nothing to do with being Catholic, for heaven's sake. No, it's not the Pope that bothers me. It's the Pop. This cane? Well, it was given to me by the boys in Battery D. It's kind of nice, isn't it? They had a little function for me on my inauguration day, and one of them yelled up to the dais, they said, "Don't break it, you clumsy bastard!" Oh, boys, I've got to watch my cousin. Nixon is very, very concerned about my cousin. He's afraid that some kid will copy me and have to have his mouth washed out with bourbon. You know, there's a joke going around about me thanks to Nixon. I'm supposed to say to Margaret when my first grandchild was born, "Margaret, when it gets old enough, I'm going to teach it to talk." And she's supposed to say, "The hell you are." What's that? What's that, son? No, stop. Oh, no, this is not a parade. It's just an old codger trying to keep his blood flowing. Who am I? Well, I'm Harry Truman. Who are you? Tim George? Well, it's very nice to meet you, Tim. What do? Well, I'm President of the United States. No, I don't run the country, Tim. There's a lot of folks involved in that. But I'll tell you what I think I do. I think I try to keep it in some kind of working order so when it's time to hand it over to youngsters like you, that it'll still run. And I hope that you'll do the same because, you know, it's been going on for almost 200 years. Kind of hard to believe, isn't it? Well, all right. Listen, if you ever get by the White House, you said, well, that's where I live, Tim. Well, your parents will know where that is. If you ever get by there, you say hello because I'd really like to show you around. All right. Nice chatting with you, son. You know, boys, we have got to keep the young people in this country stirred up. We've got to keep them enthused about their history and their future. Now, the high school kids are fine, but you know, the college kids bother me. You know, when I talk to them, sometimes they seem to think they know it all. And I try to tell them when I go talk to them that it's what you learn after you know it all that really, really makes a difference. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, eavesdropping? Is that the listening in on telephones, the bugging they call it? Notorious violation of the Bill of Rights. What? Super government? What? Do you mean dictatorship? Well, why the hell didn't you say that? You know what? Never happened here. The Constitution will stop him every time. I tell you, if any fella ever tried that, he'd be like the guy who woke up in a casket with a lily in his hand and said, "If I'm alive, what am I doing here? And if I'm dead, why do I have to go to the bathroom?" No, there's only one way that could happen, in my opinion, in this country, and that's if we had a liar in public office. Nothing more dangerous than a liar in public office, because the people might believe him. Now, and if the people ever did come across a fellow like that, well, he should show them the same compassion that he showed the Constitution, nothing more, nothing less. Remember this, boys, you always do right. It'll gratify some and it'll astonish the rest. Don't you ever say a thing like that in my presence again. I heard what you said, young man, I don't like it. Don't you ever say a thing like that. This is a great country, young man, and it was built by great people. Do you know that this is the only country in the history of mankind ever to hold out a helping hand to all the peoples of the world, including its enemies? Well, it happens to be true, and don't you ever say a thing like that again. The future, how would I know? I'm not a prophet. Well, look, I don't have an answer for that, but I'll tell you what, did you ever hear of a fellow called Tennyson? Poet, that's right, that's a good start. That's good. Well, did you ever hear of a poem called Locksley Hall? No? Well, that's all right, because I'm gonna read a bit of it for you, because I have carried this with me since my high school days. I must have copied it 50 times just to keep up with the wear and tear on the paper. Now, about your question there about the future, this is what Tennyson had to say. Now remember, he wrote this in 1840. Remember that. He said, "For I dipped into the future, far as human eye could see, saw the vision of the world, and all the wonder that would be. Saw the heavens filled with commerce, argosies of magic sails, pilots of the purple twilight dropping down in costly veils. Heard the heavens filled with shouting, and there rained a ghastly dew from the nation's airy navies grappling in the central blue. Far along the worldwide whisper of the south wind rushing warm, with the standards of the peoples plunging through the thunderstorm, till the war drums throbbed no longer, and the battle flags were furled in the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the world. And there the common sense of most shall hold a fretful realm in awe, and the kindly earth shall slumber, wrapped in universal law." Well, does that answer your... Well, they're gone. Well, at least I know how to get rid of the press now. but that's all right, because that leaves you and me alone now. I'm about to leave this office, this job, this honor that you bestowed upon me. You know, one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, he spoke very movingly of this moment. He said that in a free society, the rulers are the servants, and the people are their sovereigns and their superiors. And therefore, for the former to return to the latter is not to degrade them, but to promote them. And so, my promotion is to be one of you. You. Say, if I can do this without crying, it will really help. I just want to say that I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for coming here today. And through this 2 weeks, we've had some wonderful audiences, and people have come from far and near. We have friends here from Boston today, and we had people from New Hampshire last night. And I want to thank a few people. I want to thank Ego Actus, Bruce Kramer and Joan Kane, our wonderful director, and Rachel April, our wonderful stage manager, lightboard runner, soundboard runner. She's been just amazing. And I know we have entertainers in the room tonight, and I want to give a shout out to the Episcopal Actors Guild, because if you are looking to do something in a smaller place, if you don't need a place quite as big as Symphony Hall in Boston, well, this is an absolutely wonderful place to do small theater. The staff is just so amazing, so amazing. And I know I'm forgetting people. There's a couple of people I want to thank who have been very supportive of this project. One of them is Philip Guthrie, who's here from Boston today, and another one is my partner, Ted Guthrie, who's not here today. He's tired of seeing it. You know, Truman said that polling booth right there is the most valuable piece of real estate in this country, and we are 9 days away from one of the most important elections that we will experience in our lifetimes, for sure. And I have one request. Now, I know that everybody in this room is going to vote. I totally know that. But you know, there are people out there who may not vote. So my request is this, is that you use your telephone, you use your social media, and you remind everybody to get out there and vote, and then ask them to do the same thing with their friends, and ask their friends to do the same things, because maybe from this room tonight, maybe we can be the cause of millions of people going out to vote on November 6th. Okay. America defends. We have a little tradition, 8 performances. I guess that constitutes a tradition. We all gather afterwards at a little pub on the next block on 29th Street called Wolf Tones. All right, and so if you care to join us, please do, and we can all strike a blow for liberty.